have Ms. Priyanka Chaturvedi joining us just for a few moments. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to pause really quickly to take a moment to introduce her, as she's taken time out of her busy schedule to join us just to give us a few of her remarks. Ma'am, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm going to very briefly just turn it over to Mr. Prem Shankar, who can give a little bit of a lead-in to our introduction to your time here this afternoon. So Prem, it's over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Deepti, and welcome to this session, ma'am. We're really happy to have you. Can I have the founder of DIGI, Prime Point, Srinivasan sir, also joining us? It was, sir has been trying to get through to Chaturvedi. So can you hear me? Can you give a brief introduction to
yes.
Member of Parliament?
Good evening, Madam Priyanka Chaturvedi. I know that you are busy schedules in the Parliament and other activities. In spite of that, you have chosen a time to join us. There's a Digital Media Conclave 2021 for the purpose of introduction. And Priyanka Chaturvedi is a very star figure in the Parliament, and she doesn't need an introduction. She is a Rajya Sabha member, and she is the deputy leader of Shiva Sena party in the Parliament. And she is a standing committee member in various committees also. And more than that, the purpose of her inviting here is her Twitter, she is followed by more than 1 million people. I would like to hear from Madam Priyanka Chaturvedi. What does she feel as a social media active? She is very active in social media, and I would like to have her experience with the 1 million followers. Word to Madam Priyanka. Thank you very much for joining at a short notice, and in spite of your busy schedule. Thank you very much, Madam. Thank you. We are greatly honored to have you here in our midst. Thank you. Please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Srinivasan. You've always been very polite, very kind, and very motivating. And you said good words to me, good words about me, which I sometimes feel I don't deserve, considering I just got suspended recently.
No, that's all a political, and in fact, it has made you much more popular than even before. That's every challenge is an opportunity for you.
I'm hoping so.
I continue to be your fan. Okay.
Thank you so much, and I continue to hope that so will the others, despite the suspension, in spite of it. But having said that, I think yes, I am pretty active on social media and digital platforms, and I do track them with a lot of interest, considering there are lots of issues that concern, whether it is about privacy, whether it's about trolling, whether it is about safety, whether it is about handling your profile on social media. I was an early adopter of media platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, as well as Instagram. And all I can say is that sometimes the algorithms are skewed as far as women are concerned. There is definitely a gender inequity in terms of women being out there on these platforms and being able to get a fair chance to put their point of view across. There's a lot of trolling that happens, and while I do have these 1 million followers, there is also intense amount of trolling that happens, intense amount of threats and hate that comes my way. However, the point of being on such platforms is to harden yourself and ignore such kind of content that takes away from what you want to push out there. Always remember that when you are on these platforms, why are you on these platforms? Either you're there to engage, to get more ideas, engage with fellow people, like-minded people, get ideas in terms of what is happening in a space that interests you. So when I started out, I was not in politics. I was a blogger. I used to read books. I still am very passionate about reading books. So I started out with that, where I found like-minded people. We created a book club. I had a book review blog, which was amongst the top 10 book review blogs in India. And moving on from there, there were reviews that you used to do on Twitter, and that also gave me a space to be able to speak up on some ideas that I believe in and thoughts that I believe in. And from there, one thing moved to another. And I would definitely say that social media played a very impactful role in my political space and building my political narrative as well. Of course, there are highs and lows, but I will only concentrate on the positives and how you can work on the positives. So be very clear about what you want to communicate. Be also understanding of the fact that people's concentration on such platforms is quite minimal, in the sense they just scroll through what is happening. So keep your tweets sharp. I'll stick to Twitter because it's one of the most instant messaging platform. um, Keep your message witty, keep it sharp, keep it you can use sarcasm, you can use humor, but keep the content very close to what who you as a person are, because it's just an extension of who you are. There's no reason for you to try and portray something that you are not. So be honest. Do not be afraid of how people think and react to a particular thought process. Be well informed before you put something out there, because many times, of course, there have been certain times where I've also faced an embarrassment of having posted some news without cross checking if that news was correct or not, and got intensely trolled. So be well informed about what you want to argue, from what position are you arguing. And once it's out there, do not pull back from speaking your mind. That's most important. And I say this more from the gender perspective for women, because even if you look at the percentage of women users in these spaces, is much lesser than how men use this space. So, and many times I have spoken to women across board who tell me that they do not put their political thoughts on social media, especially Twitter, because it gets them trolled intensely. So they talk about everything else, but they do not talk about their politics because they're afraid of the kind of trolling that happens. So do not hesitate to speak your mind. And most of these trolls are nameless, faceless people, and I call them cowards because they don't have a face to show. Most of them are bots at times who have been paid to troll somebody for a period of 72 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours, depending on the content that has been put out there, which they disagree with. So speak your mind and do not be afraid of them, and do not be silenced by them. That's the biggest victory you give them. The last but not the least, there have been times when some people have crossed all boundaries of decency and engagement. Along with their trolling, they get abusive, they use threats. The cyber police and our cyber crime cells in all states are very proactively engaged in that. We should reach out to them to help in such cases, and they also end up ensuring that justice is done, and there is no uh, there's nothing that goes unheard. Of course, there are times when you don't get heard because there's a case of a platform which was created to auction women of a particular community because they were outspoken, because they had mind of their own, they were speaking against the government at times, and no action has taken. But I'm following that up, and you will always find somebody out there supporting you, as long as you do not get intimidated or silenced because you think speaking up leads to such kind of uh, unhappy space for you. So ignore such people, I would always say. But content should always be contemporary, well thought out, and put out there with an idea to engage, not to confront. This is whatever my understanding of social media has been. At least Twitter has been. Now, as far as digital platforms are concerned, I consume a lot of news coming from digital platforms, but I also understand which are the news sites which sometimes put out news which are unchecked, not well researched. I only go at well established news sites. Whatever comes on my WhatsApp does not necessarily become the truth, and I always question that perspective also that has come across. Read all sides. I do not let your ideas be your own, but it's always important to read every side possible to have better arguments for your own ideas and to strengthen your own thought processes on the ideas you espouse. So that is also very important. Never shut your mind or your conversations on the basis of the point of the idea that you have in your mind. It could be very strong, but it's also adds to your knowledge to understand what the opponent, I would say, someone with another point of view has, because there's always space for discussion and debate and maybe dissent too. So that is what my two bit is, that always verify the news you're reading and consuming, verify what you're sharing across, read all sides, be well read, understand that your content has to be very eye catching and interesting for people to follow you. In terms of Instagram, I keep it very personal. I put my family photos out there because I always believe that there's a huge curiosity about how people who are on the other side of the fence, maybe people who are from film industry, people who are from the sports industry, people who are in the political spaces, people who are influential, influencers, there's always an intense curiosity to know how they live their lives. And I find no harm in sharing how I lead my life. I'm open about the idea of being a mother to two children, sometimes who go out of hand, sometimes who I find difficult, sometimes when they tell me things. So I share that through my Facebook account, as well as my Instagram account, which is public. I share some moments of my family, some moments of my work, some moments of my friends, and I do that unhesitatingly. So this is how I have been using these platforms. This is how I've been on digital platforms. But always remember, you must understand what you're sharing out there. Is that something that if it comes back to you, you have absolutely no reason to deny that. Having said that, at any point in time, and I speak about this from experience, because whoever has seen my history, my political history, there has been a change in my political party. So and I haven't gone and deleted things I have written earlier simply because I have said things in a certain point in time for a certain reason. In hindsight, everybody can pull out those tweets, but there was a context at that point in time, a reason at that time, and I stand by those. And I stand by everything I have put out there. So go from that perspective. Do not be undermined. Do not be underconfident. Be confident about what you're sharing, as long as it comes from a well-researched point of view and well-understood perspective. That is my two bits, and I'll be happy, Srinivasan ji, if there's any question, because I could have not covered some part. If there's any question that your audience might have, I'd be happy to take them for the next 5-7 minutes, if time permits.
Deepthi, Deepthi.
Sure. All right.
Deepthi, do you have any questions? Or Prem, do you have any questions? Or is it check up the YouTube? Anything is there?
We actually do have a question. We do have a question, and the question is out of curiosity for you, ma'am. Since you are I would say, an excellent adopter of technology, and this afternoon's discussion has been about, how digitally ready are you for, the digital age of journalism, right? Having been a person who's used social media, and you've done that through trial and error, and you've amassed a massive following on Twitter as well. How, as a policymaker, can we look ahead into the future and see how policymakers can work with technology providers as well to better improve that space of the digital space of consumption? Because, like you mentioned, you're passionate about women's rights. There's been a lot of work that's been put into establishing a safer space for users on social media. That's still not a work that's complete. It's a work in progress, and there's a long way to go. So, in your opinion, what can we do that, from a policymaker level, from a technology level, and from an end user level, that could help make that space a lot more safer, but a lot more resilient to the kind of content that goes online?
So I would say, I would begin with how stakeholders, how people who are interested in policy making spaces can collaborate with those who can make those policies happen, who can argue on their behalf, stakeholder consultations that can happen online. I started from that perspective. I was not into politics. I got to know lots of barriers broke because of Twitter, and we getting to engage one-on-one with people who we used to look up to. For example, when Omar Abdullaji was the chief minister, I was just about starting Twitter. I got a chance to engage with him, someone I used to look up to. So it broke down many barriers, and it also gave you a space to be able to directly engage with these stakeholders who can bring changes in this area. In terms of how we can make it more resilient, I would say a lot needs to go in our policy. We must understand the concept of privacy. Governments do tend to have this belief that they would want to know it all, but we need to, as citizens, push back on this belief that they need to know it all. So from that space, I always believe that it can only come from a point where governments do not reduce themselves to just being political entities, but are more visionary in their understanding of digital space, which is opening up and creating many, many avenues of conversations as well as innovations. So it has to come from that perspective. We cannot be safeguarding some set of people or some set of ideas while totally rejecting others. So it has to be very democratic space. And when we talk about democratic space, the quantum of pushback also, when we see violence, we see threats, we see trolling, it has to be above everyone's politics. So that is one thing which I feel is very important, and it has to come from a space of creating structures which are resilient, and you can only create structures which are resilient when you do it from a perspective of creating an ecosystem of growth, an ecosystem of encouraging spaces which the next generation, the youth of this country understands and the world understands. And as we get more globally connected and we open up, we need to have policies which are more inclined towards safeguarding privacy, safeguarding data, safeguarding what the end users want. So that is the second thing. The last thing is about the fake narratives. I think the biggest challenge that every country and every democracy is facing at this point in time is the fake news that is pushed across as news. Then there is also social media at times, platforms like Facebook, which totally go unchecked in terms of the algorithm that they push across, which try to continue to mold a person's mindset depending on the algorithm sets that they've understood through AI, and they push news stories which are confined to your thought processes, which have started to create silos, which has started to create spaces where there is no discussion, there is only confrontation. So holding those spaces also accountable. They cannot run away by saying that this all algorithm managed and it's an AI function, etc. They need to be accountable. For example, US is doing that, Singapore is doing that, Australia is now doing that. They are going to ensure that the trolls aren't invisible in this space. So we have to look at looking at how we control these fake stories, which undermine democracies and structures that have been created. So that can only happen when we have true stakeholder engagement, and we do it from a perspective of the nation above our politics, and the government being less of a government, but more of creating an environment which is enabling for all, whether it is activists, whether it's citizens, whether it is people who are policy makers, as well as those who are going to be creating these policies. So it has to be democratic in functioning. So this, I think, is the best way forward for any democracy to be able to safeguard its own principles, its own way of how governance should be.
Thank you. Can you take one more question or?
Sure. I'll be happy to. Madam? Yeah, please.
Deepti, do you have any questions there?
Actually,
on the YouTube?
So actually, I have a quick follow-on question to our two panelists who have been with us this afternoon. We've had Dr. Marie Elizabeth Mueller joining us from Germany, and Dave Das Rajaram, who is joining us from Chennai, talking a little bit more about the digital technology and the tools that are available on the market. And so we were just at the tail end of the conversation, ma'am. So I just want to wrap up the conversation in terms of saying, where do we see our futures going in the next 5 years? Quick responses, and we'll take the responses starting with Liz, and then Dave, and then we'll come over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was very interesting to listen to Priyanka. Hello from Germany. I am not an expert for holistic questions about the future, although I'm into quantitative food tourism. But I wanted to highlight something from what Priyanka also highlighted is, if I talk to young students and to young journalists, and so it's very important to have their own space, to make their own space in social media, in the social web, and in the web, and look at it from a personal, professional perspective. I think it's very important to be transparent and to have not a private space there. That is something very different, what you can regulate with security features and so, but have a personal, professional way to make yourself visible, to be a guide, what we also say in our book, be a guide for the community and the users who interact with you. And that is most important. And maybe I can also make a little bit marketing for our book. It will be translated into English. Right now it's on the German book market. And it will be translated into English and published by Routledge in London in January or February next year. And so that is also where you can check on our perspective on social media and how it will develop in the future.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. What I would say is next year, next 5 years down the line, what I could see is the groundbreaking change is going to be 5G. The way 5G technology is going to change the way we communicate with each other, and obviously that's going to have an impact on the way we tell stories. And on the website, so I'm just restricting myself to the content because I'm not a policy expert. So the content, the way we create content is going to be more. We are going to have to create content to the user needs, which doesn't mean that if the user needs something fluffy, we give it. That's not the idea of it. So what is relevant to a community? And that is going to determine the way we format stories, the way we reshape stories, the way we create content. So it's going to be actually more user-centric, the content creation, and the distribution is going to be more social and mobile. That's my answer.
May I have the views of Madam Priyanka?
I think both of them have summarily put across exactly what I feel about these spaces. And I do agree with Dave here, where he says content is going to be something that will, as far as digital content is concerned, and we saw during the COVID lockdown how digital content exponentially rose because people were, locked up in homes and they had no other way of entertainment. And that is one space which where from becoming content is king to end user becoming the king of content. So they decide what they're viewing. They decide what they want exactly. What content will be viral, what content will not be so well received. So that is something which moving on, every content creator would also keep in mind, and digital is going to be the way forward. And when he mentions 5G, we also, which of course it's an aspect I'm sure even Liz would agree with, it also raising a lot of security concerns within across the borders, and how countries which push boundaries of following democratic norms and autocracy are trying to misuse those platforms are also going to be a huge challenge for democracies in the future. So those are things that we really need to be concerned about. Data privacy, data being the king as far as future is concerned. And how we shape our futures as far as the youth is concerned is by creating an ecosystem which creates jobs for them, because they understand digital the best, and they do understand that that is where the future lies. India has that bandwidth, India has that intelligence, India has that knowledge resource. How we create an ecosystem out of it is something that, through our policies, enabling policies, as well as policies that safeguard our futures, our territories, etc., is something that we would have to look at and work towards. Otherwise, I think digital future is digital.
Absolutely.
And by the way, we're also going to be talking digital money very soon, digital currency, which is one big controversial area.
Absolutely agree with you. In fact, we touched a little bit upon NFTs earlier on in the course of the conversation. But I definitely believe like today's conversation has helped us also get a better and a clearer understanding on the fact that when you talk about the digital age of journalism and you talk about our country as a whole, we have to work hand in hand. No one thing can thrive on its own. We need to work with technologists, we need to work with media, as well as the policymakers, in order to really build a robust future. And a future where we're not making mistakes into it, but we can predict what is going to happen and work towards ensuring we don't make those errors and mistakes that the past have, sort of defined this technology route that we've taken. And with that, I just want to, wrap up our conversation that we've had thus far. And I want to thank you, Liz and Dave, for taking time out of your very busy schedules, and Priyanka for joining us as well on a very busy day for you as well. I just want to turn over the floor to Mrs. Srinivasan to help conclude our conversation and lead us into the next session of our conclave this afternoon, which will be the workshop session that will be headed by Ashwini. So with that, over to you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, panelists. Liz has joined from German. It is really, we are very proud of it. And Dave is a professor for journalism, and he has also joined. And really, I am so happy and delighted that Priyanka Chaturvedi, one of the vibrant young parliamentarians, has joined. And she is a very ardent user of social media. I always admire her, and I always follow her also on her Twitter and social media. Very vibrant lady. And in fact, because she is there, and I just wanted to share one information, because I'm also the founder of two digital security organizations. I am one of the co-founders from 2004 onwards, because on the digital security and digital law. And probably many of you will be knowing, even Madam also will be knowing, that the 66A, the abolition, has created a lot of problem. Even on the day when the Supreme Court ruled to say abolishing or cancelling the 66A, when all others rejoiced, the media rejoiced that second freedom has come, we were the only people to say that we are going to feel the impact only after 1 year. And that was what we were telling. Now that is a river in a hurry or with the media hype, and it was removed. That has now, if you have closely examined, I request Madam Priyanka to examine it exclusively, what impact it had on abolition of Supreme Court abolition of 66A among the women. I know I have been getting a lot of information, and the women are not safe because of but that could have been the same law, the same clause which was in the UK. That was their Supreme Court had asked the government to frame certain rules and regulations. But here it was abolished. But I feel that she can make some study on that. In the interest of the women of our sisters, mothers, and ladies in this country, I think it is better she takes up that what is the negative impact that has created on 66A, irrespective of the political philosophies and other things, because let us not stand on the prestige or on the ego issue. And it is some modification is needed in the parliament. The 66A, I don't say that the entire 66A need to be revamped here, and but it has to be modified that to bring in some sort of safety for the women. And I request Madam Priyanka to examine that, because she can make, she has got her own team to examine it and deliver the report. And thank you very much, Madam Priyanka, for the wonderful presentation and joining us at short notice. Though you are scheduled for tomorrow, I wanted her to join today. And though I know that her pressure of time today in the midst of thick political activities at Delhi, really, I am grateful to you on behalf of Digital Journalists Association and our team. I am very grateful to you, madam. Thank you very much. Over to Deepti.